So, throughout my childhood and early teen years, my family and I moved a good bit. Most of the homes, apartments, townhouses, or duplexes I grew up in did not have basements. So, having a basement now in our current house, I find to be an awesome luxury. The only thing is, I don't know about all of you who have basements, or maybe just a shed or an extra room that you can store things, but I feel like it can be really easy for that basement to fill up. I mean, it seems like if we're not really intentional about it, things can pile up quickly. Stuff just seems to appear. And while it's true that not one single item, piece of mail, or gift can turn a room from clean to cluttered, eventually, one item can add to another, and a room can become cluttered, and eventually, if we're not careful, unusable. And it's super interesting the types of things that can find their home in a basement, each with its own story and reason for being there. There are those things that were once usable but now might be obsolete, like an old computer or a piece of electronic. Sometimes it's stuff that was essential during certain parts of our lives, but now it's just kind of in the way. Then there are those things that we maybe used but replaced with other items, but we're scared to get rid of that original item because we might need it someday. And then a lot of things fall into that category of things that were given to us. Things that we didn't ask for, maybe we didn't want, maybe we can't even really use, but for whatever reason, someone gave it to us and we didn't want to make waves or we were being nice, so we accepted the item. But see, then we felt bad because we thought, well, we really can't get rid of it because it was given to us, so into the basement it goes. And then there's my favorite category. The type of stuff that we don't know what it is or even where it came from, but we don't throw it away because we think it's important to someone we live with, only to find out later they have no idea what it is either. Then there's the hardest stuff to get rid of, things that have those emotional attachments to them, things that are connected in our minds to good times or the people that are important to us. In reality, we know the good times are in our memories and not the item, and that the people, living or past, are also not the item, but maybe there's a part of us that feels like we might be betraying them by giving it up. Yet, it weighs us down nevertheless, taking up that precious, limited space we have in our basement. Friends, I'm guessing you can see the parallel that we're building with our children's time and with our offertory, that sometimes things can accumulate and weigh us down, whether that's in our actual basements or in the basements of our being, those deep depths of our soul. Things that take up space, that weigh us down, that get in the way, that might even be inconsistent with who we feel called to be. Could be bad habits, could be limiting or disempowering beliefs about ourselves or the world, guilt or shame. Whatever it is, it can weigh us down. And I believe now, after all we've been through together, now is the best time to clean out those basements and make way for new, exciting, and challenging things God has in store for us. Just as I find it almost beyond coincidental that we completed our most recent AV upgrade for live streaming in February of 2020. That is true, February of 2020. I also find it really interesting that thanks to the help of our friends Herb and Joanne High, Elizabeth and I were actually able to clean out our actual basement in February of 2020. Now, at the time, we were attempting to get rid of some things that we didn't need to make way for new life, Joanna. Little did we know that this space that we freed up in our basement would become the space that provided for almost every special musical production that we completed over the last year and a half of the pandemic. And also, the space that features pretty much all the music that, if you tune into annual conference, you'll be seeing. Now, before going any further, I did want to address up front somewhat of what has become a bit of an elephant in the room, and that is, in case you haven't noticed, I may look a little bit differently these days than I did before the pandemic. And after many questions, comments, and concerns and curiosity, I can say, yes, I am a bit leaner these days, and I am, at least as far as I know, healthy, and that my transformation was a healthy one. Having addressed that, I know many of you expressed interest in knowing the mechanics of what I did, or even maybe more so the reasons for doing so. And while I don't mean to tease you, much of that might be another sermon for another day. But I can say, since last year, I wanted to challenge myself to achieve some fitness goals. Weight loss, which again can be some of the most obvious change to the outside, was never actually an intention of mine, but was rather something that just needed to happen in order for me to accomplish the goals that I had set for myself. And this is where I see an excellent parallel to where I believe we are called as a church. As we look forward into that new and undiscovered wilderness ahead, I believe that we are called, that God calls us to be people in the world that we are called to be, and that it might be time for us to give up that which is weighing us down to fully live in to what we are called to be. And just as weight loss itself was never an intention of mine, my focus just being on health, I also want to be clear that weight loss is certainly not something I'm emphasizing in this sermon topic. I certainly support any and all for personal or health reasons wish to make physical improvements. That's awesome. But I honestly believe now more than ever, fixation on body size and weight is also something that can weigh us down as a society and as a people. While we take it as obvious, I certainly believe it needs to be said that God loves us no matter what our size, and that people who truly love us will love us no matter how big or small we are. And in the end, what matters most isn't the number on the scale, but how we treat others. So for me, in order to accomplish certain goals that I had set for myself, I needed to get rid of some stuff, literally and figuratively, that was weighing me down. And I'm guessing you all noted in the offertory that while I was holding on to that 5-pound dumbbell, I lost the use of my left hand. But I mean, it wasn't bad, right? Sure, I could have done more if I wasn't holding on to the weight, but it was good enough. That's a trap we can fall into, right? Knowing we can do more, but for various reasons, still holding on to that which limits us. Settling maybe for good enough. It's really easy to find excuses for not cleaning out our basements. And the tough part is when we start cleaning things out, it really doesn't feel like it makes much of a difference at first. Just as one item does not create a room of clutter, removing one item from a messy room does not instantly clean it up. And while things may have been going okay with one hand, if I wasn't holding on to that extra 5 pounds, I feel like it would allow me to accomplish much more, which I'm hoping we'll see in the postlude. Hopefully. What are the things in our personal lives and as a church community that might be weighing us down, keeping us from fully living into God's calling for our lives, keeping us from realizing our true potential as agents for positive change in our communities and in our worlds? In Isaiah 43:18 and 19, we read, "Forget the former things, do not dwell in the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up, do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the desert and streams in the wasteland." Biblical scholar Gene Tucker notes that the former things referred to here are a wide range of complex traditions, and that these former things shouldn't be dwelled on because God is proposing to do a new thing. God is making a way in the wilderness, and boy, are we in a time of wilderness. Now, I will note, sure, there's plenty of stuff in our basements that I'm sure is awesome, things that we really should hold on to. I mean, in our basement, there literally is the structure and foundation on which everything else is built. And there's some great stuff there, stuff that we've needed and we continue to need. In fact, maybe there's some stuff in the basement that it's time to pull out again that we haven't been using. Maybe it's time to repurpose some of those things. But I mean, let's be real here, folks. Holding on to things is not usually the problem for us. Holding on too long and too tightly continue to be the area of growth for many of us. In Matthew 19:21, we read, Jesus said to him, "If you wish to be perfect, go, sell your possessions, give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." And I kind of tend to agree with a lot of those New Testament scholars that believe Jesus was actually being pretty serious here. Several weeks ago, when we had David Radcliffe here as a guest preacher, he stated that it is truly amazing how much we have, consume, and hold on to that we really don't need. Very, very true indeed. In fact, I was just talking to someone just this morning and sort of coming to that realization that throughout the pandemic, I think many of us have learned what it is we actually need, what's really important, and what are the unessential things. So, keeping with our basement analogy, is there stuff down there that was important at one time, but maybe is just obsolete now, like those old electronics or computers? Are there things that were given to us that we never asked for that we find ourselves holding on to? From a personal standpoint, maybe it's holding on to an identity that's been placed upon us that's limiting us for some reason. For example, maybe you were given the identity of being the shy one, and that has in some ways limited your confidence in being assertive. Maybe you were given the identity as the fun one, but you've carried around this as a burden, meaning that you always had to be up for others and that you couldn't ask for help and allow others to help you, to unburden you from that 5-pound weight. Or maybe you were the smart one, which is a compliment, but maybe had a hidden implication that you were also, let's say, the unathletic one. Why not strive to be both if that's something you feel called to do? What limiting beliefs or bad habits are weighing us down? Maybe we have a habit of comparing ourselves to others. Maybe it's checking social media. What about as a church? I mean, we've heard it time and time again from former interns and even former pastors that this church can be a little bit overly bureaucratic. Maybe now's a time to look at that identity, see if it really is weighing us down. Maybe now's a time to declutter. And like I said, more often than not, basements usually don't get effectively cleaned out all at one time, but rather as a process. Sometimes we have those big breakthrough moments where significant change happens, but significant, lasting change more so comes about as a result from a lot of little actions over time. So as we approach what is certainly the most significant time of change and excitement in the congregation since I've been here, and Elizabeth and I were just commenting, it's 15 years now. We have a new building project on the way. We have a new lead pastor on the way. What better time to clean out the basement and make way for new and exciting ministry? It is an exciting time in the life of the church. And we have a lot of questions to answer as a community. How do we be Christ in our neighborhood and in the world in this post-pandemic time? How do we stand against racial injustice in a world so in need of healing? How do we redefine what it means to be in community with each other when, as it stands now, almost 50% of us who worship in our worship services worship in person, and another 50% worship online? How can we bring about healing, understanding, reconciliation, and love in a world that has become polarized by extremes and divisions? And as a little teaser, we will be looking at this question in our upcoming sermon series, Come Together. Friends, we have a lot of work to do and a lot of fun to have as we move forward. As we do, I encourage us to see what is it that it might be time to let go of. What's weighing us down? What's getting in the way of us using those gifts that God has given us? Let's get rid of that which is weighing us down, for we have a lot of joyful ministry ahead.